Hi, and welcome to Crash Course Cryptozoology. It's an unfortunate truth that cryptozoology is often met with a certain aversion by the public. And of course, this aversion can come in many ways. And most of the time, it comes through ridicule. But there's a specific source of ridicule that I think has been especially damaging, not to the field as a reputation necessarily, because it's not as important as this point. It's more important that it's ruining the public perception of the real approach that many investigators have. So perhaps the word isn't really damaging reputation, it's something more like mistranslation. And that's what I want to make this video all about. I want to discuss a specific, very famous case of mistranslation in cryptozoology, and I want to discuss why, fundamentally speaking, this isn't the only time this mistranslation has existed, and why I think it's useful to be aware of this mistranslation. Explorers and travelers to the Himalayan regions are often no strangers to the concept of the Yeti. Often spoken of by monks, natives, and Sherpas, the Yeti is often described, either metaphysically or physically, as a hairy, man-like humanoid or primate or ape that lives in the wilds of the Himalayan region. Spiritually speaking, many view the Yeti as a sort of manifestation of the wild, like many wild man stories around the world, while more physically speaking, many witnesses see it as a species of Himalayan ape. Believe it or not, there was not much of a concept of a white Yeti until Western explorers brought it back with them. Around the early to mid 1900s, a lot of explorers began to learn about the Yeti, and this sort of actually started a boom, you could say, in the media popularization of cryptozoology as this sort of Indiana Jones-like effort to discover monsters. Of course, our phrase, the abominable snowman, which itself is a mistranslation of a phrase meaning the filthy snowman, comes from this boom. It's just one example of some of the minor mistranslations that we've had, but the one I want to focus on is the big one. The fact that Western explorers came up with the idea of the white Yeti. The history of sightings, and even more recent ones, have never described a white Yeti seriously. Most of the time, they're actually described as dark in color, sometimes even reddish-brown. Depictions become more extravagant. It lives in the snow, therefore it would look mystical if it were white, almost as if to embody the land around it. And that was completely a concoction by these explorers, and especially the media they were telling their stories to. Scientifically speaking, there is literally no ground for the concept of the white Yeti. Now, this is something called a fallacy, which, generally speaking, is something like, well, a mistaken belief that proves to be invalid. Another example of a similar fallacy would be the media popularization of the idea of the North American Bigfoot being this mystical, one-of-a-kind thing that wanders around the woods, not an alleged species of multiple individuals of biological great ape-like organisms. I'd like to propose a sort of idea here. This fallacy pops up a lot in cryptozoology because cryptozoology is good media cannon fodder. It really is, and it sells. Look into the actual sightings, look into the actual reports behind what's being said. And don't fall for what I'd officially like to call the white Yeti fallacy. That being said, until next time.